Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Pipeline Podcast. I'm your host, Darren McClymans, episode 128. We are joined by a very, very special guest. It is Oscar season, but I am joined by my award-winning friend, Everest. How's it going, buddy?
What's up, man? I don't know about award winning, but
Nah,
you're too
don't humble
kind.
yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here. How you doing, man?
I am good. I am good. It's very fun. It's a very fun full circle moment because you were invited to like this themed episode last year. We couldn't make it work. Whatever, it's fine. It's dandy. But I was like, maybe we can get them this year. So I'm very glad you're here.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
amongst your very busy schedule, and it's been a while since we've done like a solo like episode. I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was this time last year. I think it was around this time when we talked about our like halfway through the year kind of like what movies had we'd seen and stuff like that.
Sure.
Since then, what we did the 100th episode, and then we did
Right.
end of the year episode as
Oh,
well,
right.
which
Yeah.
was a guest among that. So, no, yeah, I'm really excited. Like you're like my like movie guy guest. Like you're the guest. I have like all right, step away from just the comic book movies and the Star Wars or whatever the big
Sure.
popcorn flicks things are. Have you on, and I'll ask you like what the Oscars means to you and all the fun stuff. But like, I really enjoy Oscar season because, like I just said, like it's an opportunity, I think, to change my taste buds a little bit, right?
Mm.
Like so
Mm-hmm.
much of what I watch are the like biggest blockbusters and Disney and Star Wars and Marvel and
Sure.
DC. And it's like it gives me the excuse to be like, okay, those are fine and dandy. Here are some things that you probably wouldn't have watched otherwise if you weren't
Right.
forced to try something new. And I think that's why I really enjoy it. I mean, why do you like the Oscars, or like why do you like this kind of moment to like celebrate cinema, if you will?
Right. I mean, kind of hit the nail on the head there. I think it is like at its core a celebration of like an art form that we and I love so much. I also do think that as my like tastes have shifted more
Mm,
throughout the
yeah,
years, the the Oscar kinds of movies have generally ended up being like the ones
sure.
that will end up more often on my favorites of the year list. Not to say
Hmm.
that, every movie in my top 10 or whatever is going to be Oscar nominated because it's still not like that. But
Right.
and I guess I would also say like I'm kind of a big sports fan. That's kind of my other love.
Yeah.
And so to have this like season where like these films, and even though the art is totally subjective, are kind of
Mhm.
contending in a way, and it's like, oh, if this happens, then that's gonna win the Oscar, or what is better than the
Sure.
other in this specific realm. I really get into that, and yeah, it's a pretty big moment every year for me. Kind of going back a couple of years, my mom and I would always try to watch all the movies we could, and then watch it together. And then now I'm at a college surrounded by a bunch of film students and film
Mhm.
fans, so it's pretty massive here as well. But yeah, I love the Oscars. Not that the event itself is always the most
Right.
well run, or the like. I have a lot of issues with the Academy,
Sure.
um, but the actual, the essence of it, I'm all here for.
Amazing. Yeah. I think this is a pretty good transition because since you've joined the show, we kind of like to open this show up with a little segment I call like creator spotlight, which just kind of gives me a chance to just talk with my creator one on one, my guest one on one, have a more like not deeper conversation, but more serious conversation. Isn't just Marvel, isn't just movies and TVs and stuff like that. Um, and I feel like my connection to the Oscar, like my association with the Oscars, I think will always kind of be connected to you and our friend
Mm,
group because like you guys are what really got me into movies. And like I remember 2019, like us
yeah,
all in a group chat being like, yeah, how many of the best pictures have we seen, guys? Like what have we seen? And me be at a place in that friend group being like, I have to watch all these movies. I have to get caught up with all my friends who are watching all these movies.
right. It
Um,
also it also helped that 2019 is like one of the great
so good.
Oscar years
Yeah.
in our lifetime, I think. Okay, yeah, that was a special year, and that was also the first one where I really like
Yeah.
had seen, like, by the end of it, all of them,
Mhm.
and it was, yeah, it was really cool. So 2019, I agree, was kind of I had watched a couple of ceremonies or like kept up with it the couple years before that, but that was the year I remember us in that group chat, and it was really cool for us all to be watching those movies.
Yeah, and I have found myself, I think, like really also like kind of like the start of this segment thinking about kind of the origins of our friendship a little bit, because
Mm-hmm.
the whole launch of it was really based on like the original podcast I launched many years ago where you were the first guest, which is a more interview style segment. I really liked that. I wanted to pull something in. Again, you were the first guest. I've been thinking a lot about that. I was rewatching just a little bit of that episode, what was now maybe 6-7 years ago, which
Oh, geez.
has made this like a weird like retrospective of like we've all been friends like 7 years,
7 years, yeah.
something like that, which is an insane thing, you know. Like most of these guests I have on, I'm talking about, I kind of like I know them, but like not like know them. I feel like I know you pretty well. Like our friendship is pretty long winded. How are
Yep.
you feeling just like in life? Like how is life for you now comparatively like 6, 7, 8 years ago? Like how are you feeling right now?
Oh man, what a question! I thought we were coming on here to
I
talk
know.
about the
Get
movies,
real.
and now we're a deep dive into life. I would say it's definitely like life feels more like consequential
Oh,
right now
sure.
than it did back when I started
Mhm.
meeting you guys and hanging out and creating content with you guys. I was literally in middle school when we
Yeah,
met. And now this is my second year in college,
I
which
think
is
it was,
insane.
wasn't it elementary? Like the end of
No,
elementary?
I was in middle school.
Was it middle school? Okay, okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and now I'm second year of college,
Sure.
and I don't know, sometimes I feel bad because I'm like, I wish we don't get the times where we're
Yeah.
all like on Discord talking as much anymore, but I still really, really value that group chat and you guys and all the friendships and memories. But yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm just about to
Mhm.
get spring break here, which is a
Yes.
much needed break from everything going on at college. But yeah, I'm doing well. What about you?
Good. No, I'm very good. And like I think like re-listening to some of that episode was kind of like a weird like shock thing, because like I was at the point where it's like I was considering college, and like we were talking about that in that episode. You're like, oh, any ideas, you know, where you want to go? You were in middle school still. So now having like that point of like was like, well, I didn't go to college. Now you're in college and 2 years into college, and just like everyone's kind of gone in their own paths, their own directions. It
Yeah,
like I do think it is that weird kind of like passage of time thing that's like, whoa. Um, and this is something I've talked about these last 2 weeks, which is a weird kind of thing. I think COVID was such a weird time
yeah,
because it's like time just didn't pass for a while. Like there was
hmm
3, almost 5 years where it's like, it's fine, we can just do whatever. And I think right now is like, whoa, it's been 5 years since COVID. You know,
sure.
everyone's kind of waking up for the
It's
first time
still
in
yeah, it
years,
still feels
which
like 2022 in my
yeah,
mind. Like
it's
yeah,
it's crazy. Like I also think like the election has kind of done that for me, where it's like because I graduated in 2021, which was the last election. So now
sure.
having another election 4 years later, kind of after high school, of like, what? We just had one. What are you talking about? This is a weird time capsule. And like being in, this is kind of my last question, and then we can move on. But like, we're not going to get political, not going to do that. But like having so many big real life changes while you're in college, while this is kind of your branching off point into the like real world, like how does that feel? Like, is there a fear? Is there, like, do you feel that shift in the air in college? And a time that's like, oh, like we're gonna change the world, we're gonna, make the like big change. I feel like those are the kind of things that they kind of teach you in college and stuff like that. Do you feel that at all?
Yeah, there was a great tweet I saw like last year, I think, that said, um, like it would be great if we could just have one moment of precedentedness because it felt like every other week we were living through an unprecedented time with
Mm.
everything happening. Like, and that was back when like even like the Titanic submarine thing happened, and then there was like all these crazy
Yeah.
political things going on. I definitely feel it at college. I mean, like I won't get political on the show, but like a
Yeah.
lot
Right.
of people around like where I am here at this college
Yeah.
are very left leaning, more like liberal.
Yeah.
And so I think there's definitely um some fear, some like a lot of responsibility
Mm,
that I feel and that others around me feel. I think like a responsibility to like, wow, it is like we've talked about it for a while, but it is going to be us and like our
mm,
generation who
yeah.
is going to be responsible for how like a lot plays out and works out here. Um, so yeah, it's crazy for sure. Especially like going through this election and everything, like definitely something that's been on my mind in a way
Yeah.
that it was never really before this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like not to dive too into it, even though I easily could go down that rabbit hole of just being, the anger and that whole thing. But I do agree there is
Sure.
a bit of responsibility you kind of feel. I feel like I've kind of gone through that a little bit because again, I'm in a very like Republican area.
Mhm.
So someone that does kind of fall into to that queer umbrella, there's a lot of it is like there's not a lot of that around there. Is there a little responsibility to like show some kind of representation? Because I've had friends, like not to go all in that, but I've had friends being like, oh, should we go back in the closet? Should we do all those things? Should we blah, blah, blah? There's a lot of fear when it comes to that kind of stuff, just all around, not even just in like the queer circles. That's like, but what can we do really? And again, I
Right.
assume someone that's in college like feels that even more because that's such a big like building block of like what's the change we can make in the world.
Yeah.
So
Definitely. Definitely.
yeah, very very deep hitting questions going into like a
No, I
conversation
love it.
about movies. Yeah.
I love it,
Um
man.
but I mean that's kind of what movies is all about too. Like there's a couple movies that had come out this year that had kind of put me in a spot of like man, like these are really deep hitting conversations that need to be had in our society. So
Sure.
um
Yeah.
definitely a parallel there, I feel. But yeah, we're gonna be jumping in here. I was gonna pull up individual like photos for each movie, slept in, did not have a chance to. So I have a website here. I think it's Rotten Tomatoes that just have all the best picture noms of 2024. 2025, sorry. I always get like confused about that because it's the 2025 Oscars, but they're the 2024
Yeah.
movies. It shouldn't be 2020. Okay, it's fine, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's the 2025 Oscars. Let's just jump into here.
Sure.
Um, just in general, and I know we talked about it like pre-stream. Like, what was your thoughts on this year's Oscar, just in general? Like, did you feel like it's an improvement? Worse than last year? Current culture around the whole thing?
Yeah. Um, what I would say is, well, I think the group of films and like nominees that were prevalent in this year's Oscars were maybe the worst, so
Mm,
like a worse selection than the past 2 years, like 2023,
sure.
2022. Thought it was a little bit of a weaker nominee
Mm,
year. However, there were still like great movies within that, and I do think um the presentation of this year's show was for me like the best it's been in a long time. Like I thought Conan was overall pretty good as a host. I thought there was like a love for the art form
mm,
that was apparent in this year's show, which I think is
yeah.
sometimes missing. It still ran like super long, which it always does, and there was that. But just as a whole, like I thought it was a really good show, and I thought like the things that mattered, that actually matter about the
Mhm.
like the Oscars came through, which you can't
Yeah.
always say. Plus, it helps that nobody slapped anyone else, and they didn't
Yeah.
move Best Actor to the end, hoping for a Chadwick Boseman win, and then it's Anthony
Jeez.
Hopkins, and it's just the
Yeah.
worst thing you've ever seen. Um, so yeah, I thought it was a good show. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, I think there's become a reputation with the Oscars in the last like 6 years since I've been watching, at least, of like one big thing going wrong that completely like is the talking point. And like, yeah, someone went a little over, someone told them to stop the music and whatever, and like,
Oh
oh,
my god,
maybe
Adrian
the
Brody's speech is terrible, dude. Oh my god, makes
I
me so mad.
that was so funny because like in the moment I was like, you know what? Hell yeah, tell him to make him wait. And then it's like, oh, but maybe you shouldn't have done that actually. You didn't really say anything.
Yeah, he didn't say anything, and it's like they cut they cut so many other like of the this is an
Yeah,
issue I have with so you actually do need to play people off. Like
sure.
and you need to do it equally because you do only have a certain amount of programming that I know it's the Oscars, but they still like you have a certain amount of time.
Right.
And what'll end up happening is like you let the more like I guess prevalent to a casual audience like winners, the actors, the directors, whatever, talk forever, and then it ends up that the short film winner or
It's like
the
12
the
seconds. Yeah.
costuming, makeup, and hairstyling winners get cut off after 30 seconds, and
Hmm.
it sucks. So that's one thing that I did think was an issue. Um,
I agree.
yeah, in general I have no like Adrian Brody's super talented, but that
Hmm.
speech kind of pissed me off.
Yeah, and there's a thing, and I understand they have to entertain like the masses and try to bring people in, but there is a part of me that's like, we can have this full on dance sequence and like a 20-minute like comedy special and all these things. It's like I feel like I'd rather just like slightly longer speeches. Like I would like some of these you'd be able to shoot a couple more seconds or whatever. So like maybe
Sure.
cut out a giant performance with a sandworm and Deadpool jumping on screen. As funny as
Hey,
that
no, that
is.
was tough. The sandworm was gas. I love the sandworm.
I
Um,
very fun. It was a great bit, but I was like, yeah, but you're complaining about runtime. Maybe didn't
sure.
need it. I don't
Uh,
know.
yeah, the
It's
James
fun.
Bond like montage, like song montage
Yeah,
was a little weird. Um, yeah, I don't know.
very interesting. But Emily Perez. So I should say I think we've both seen 7 each. I've not seen all 10. But we'll
Me
see which
either.
ones we've seen, which ones we haven't seen. This is one I haven't seen. Um,
Yeah. I watched a little bit of it and I've seen like a lot of clips from it. I just
yeah,
have not been able to finish this one. Um, and this movie was maybe the story of this
it
award
was.
season
It was the villain.
because
Yeah.
it's nominated for the most Oscars of any film. Um, it's nominated for like the same amount of like nominate like it's nominated for more than Oppenheimer is last year, which is just ridiculous.
Crazy.
Um, and there was a period of time where it was like, oh, this is the best picture winner. Like they had so much momentum, and then there was so much hate towards it, and so like the lead actress and the director saying horrible things or having horrible things found, and it tanked it. Which, as someone like to be completely honest, I haven't watched it all the way through. Maybe I would really like it, but
Right.
I'm kind of glad that it ended up not really being much of a factor in the end.
Hmm. I agree. I agree. I again, I haven't seen it. I started it, and I kind of was put in a place, and this is like a big fatal flaw of mine. But like, I do sometimes struggle with films in other languages. So
Sure.
when I watch one, I gotta
Mhm.
make sure it's worth my time, right?
Yeah.
Like I loved Godzilla, Godzilla minus one, Godzilla
Yeah.
one, yeah,
Awesome
Godzilla,
movie.
amazing. Past Lives last year, amazing.
Yeah.
I've just only heard the worst things about this movie. I was like, I'm not gonna spend 2 hours of my life. I have to put a lot more effort into watching a movie like this if it's going to
Sure.
just suck. Like, I don't really want to put in that effort. And yeah, like you've just heard the absolute worst things about this movie. Like, I haven't seen it, but every clip I've seen seems like it won Best Song this year, and the clip of the
Yeah.
song they showed sounded horrible in my
It's
opinion.
bad.
Which,
Yeah. It's not good.
and as I've been on my like Wild Robot high horse all year. It was like, oh, but Touch the Sky was so good, and it wasn't even
Mm.
nominated. Oh,
Yeah,
come on,
Wild Robot got shut out, man.
nothing. Yeah,
Um, although
but
I think Flow is a
I'm glad.
pretty impressive movie. Like to for the situation under which, like the circumstances under which that movie was created, the what it kind of signifies for indie filmmaking and indie like animation. Like it was Latvia's first movie ever nominated at the awards. I'm a big Flow fan. So
Him too.
that's the like if it was any other like if Inside Out 2 had won over The Wild Robot, I probably would have been upset because I love The Wild Robot. It's in my top 3 of last year.
I will say I watched the one with the snail, the claymation one. I think it's better. I thought it was better than Flow. I think that movie, I could not believe how good it was because I watched it last minute. I was like, oh, this is gonna be just fun. And it's like a rated R claymation movie about the like meaning of life and like how not to like waste a life and like depression and like all these like very deep themes. I was like, you know what? This is another one where if it won, I couldn't be mad either because it was like this year for like best animated film. I think any of them could have done it in a different year, in a less competition.
I agree with that.
They were all incredible. But I agree. I think I'm glad Flow won best animated movie. I just wish Wild Robot either would have won best song or even best score because I think
the score is really good.
Score is incredible. I would have loved if it won score. But yeah, we don't have to talk about this one too much because again, like, do you have anything else to say? I know you haven't seen it, but anything?
No, not really. Okay. We can move on.
Okay, wait, really quickly, thoughts on Zoe winning for best supporting actress? Because I know that's a bit of a controversial thing too.
I think there were better winners, at least from just what I've seen, but I also haven't seen the full Zoe Saldana performance. From what most people seem to think, it is like if this movie was going to win anything, it should have been that. Like most people do say she is the one thing in the movie that is genuinely good. Sure. So I definitely don't think it's like a horrible win. I think there were better, like in a movie we're gonna talk about coming up, like Monica Barbaro is incredible in A Complete Unknown. Isabella Rossellini, I think, in Conclave is kind of a standout in a super small screen time, like percentage of screen time. So I don't know if it was the best choice, but if you're gonna award Emilia Perez anything, like this makes sense, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad she won something, just maybe not under these circumstances, I guess.
Sure. It like Zoe Saldana is the caliber of actress that should have an Oscar.
Absolutely.
So I'm happy in that sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, next up we have A Complete Unknown. I did feel a little bad for Timothée Chalamet being there for 2 movies and not having not won for any of them, which I can imagine maybe hurts a little bit. But
yeah.
What do you think of A Complete Unknown?
Have you seen this one? I don't remember.
I have. Yeah.
Okay.
I saw it in theaters.
Yeah, I like the movie. For me, it doesn't do enough to separate itself from any of the other like better musical biopics that we've seen. Like, I don't think this is special compared to Rocket Man or like I think it's better than Bohemian Rhapsody. But we see a bunch of these. I don't think it's that different. But from what I've heard from people, it does do a really good job, like encapsulating Bob Dylan as an artist and as a person.
Sure.
I like Timmy a lot in the role. I've become kind of a like Timothée Chalamet guy.
Yeah.
I think he's sick. I think he's really good. I think everyone in this movie is good. Like Edward Norton turns in a solid performer or supporting performance. Elle Fanning, Monica Barbaro, as I said, I think she's the standout of the film.
Yeah, she's really good.
Yeah, I liked it. I didn't love it. That was kind of my take.
Yeah, I think I always go into musical biopics very interestingly because, like, as you know, not a huge music guy. I normally don't like. Obviously, I know Bob Dylan. Like, I'm I know of Bob Dylan. But if you told me, hey, name a Bob Dylan song, I couldn't be like, yes, this one. So I think going into these biopics are very interesting because I don't know the thing they're really being based on. It's like, all right, I guess I'm watching this original movie. Whatever. I agree with you. I think it's good. I don't think it's Oscars good, but like you said, it's definitely very Oscar coded. Like I feel like they love these biopic kind of movies.
They do. Yeah.
I think the standout or at least the thing I took away, I do think that Timothy Chalamet is really, really good here. Like, I think
Yeah.
as someone who doesn't know Bob Dylan, I feel like he does transform throughout that movie. Like, it starts off like, hey, that's Timothy Chalamet, and by the end, that feels like a different person, and he really
Sure.
kind of transformed himself through the course of the movie. And I felt like I really did like this commentary on like what fame will do to a person and how it can transform a humble man into a egotistical, like, not maniac, but like person, and how it will change your perspective on things. Like, I thought that narrative was really, really cool. But I agree. I think out of all the ones I saw, all 7 I saw, this was my least favorite.
Oh wow. Okay.
Just on the basis of it, but I thought it was
I
good.
might agree with that. There's a couple where I don't think I didn't actually rank them yet. Maybe I'll
Sure.
have to do that. But yeah, I will say I think Dune is Chalamet's better performance this
I agree.
year. I think he's transformative in Dune Part 2. Like,
Yeah.
and I know I'm a lot higher on that movie than you are, but he's awesome in that movie. But he's very good in this one too. I honestly would not have been mad if he had won the Oscar at all.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I was like kind of rooting for it, I would say.
He's kind of like the underdog a little bit, because he's like, he would be what, like, the youngest performer or whatever to have whatever, and
And
he
the guy he would have like beaten for that record won it over him, Adrian Brody.
Yeah.
So,
And also it's like his whole like I want to be the greatest speech would have been a really cool kind of like journey. Like, I think that narrative would have been cool, because
I love that speech, by the way.
it's really good.
I've been talking to so many people. I think that speech is awesome because he's right. People don't talk like that in like a business that he says it is subjective, but that I don't think that means you can't want to be great and be honest about like this desire to, like, he wants to be one of the greats, and he said it, and he wasn't like, he didn't put anyone else down in saying any of that. It was just like, yeah, I put a lot of work into this. I care about this a lot. I want to go down as one of the best to ever do it. And honestly, I think he is going to go down as one of the best to ever do it when his
I
career.
agree. Like, this is like he was up for Dune last year. He was up for Dune 2 this year, and a complete unknown. I don't know if he's ever had like a bad movie. Like, I know some people don't like Wonka, but like I think his performance in Wonka is still really good.
Yeah.
And at such a young age still, like, he is like putting like a lot of these older actors, they run for their money. I think he's doing a fantastic job. I think he's gonna get there. And let's be honest, he might be there next year too for Dune 3, for Dune Part 3, right? Is that next year or
Dune
the year
3, Dune 3 comes out next year. He's also going to be in a Safdie brothers film this year with A24 that could be up for an Oscar again. So yeah, he's on a heater. He's on a heater for sure.
Absolutely. Wicked, and I think we've talked about Wicked a couple of times here and there, so we don't have to spend too much time. But I feel like each year there's like one blockbustery movie or like one or two to, I think, bring in the casual audience, which is not a bad thing. I'm not like, that's not a diss on Wicked at all. But I feel like this year was like last year's Barbie. I think this year's Wicked. And I'm glad, because I do think that maybe helped. I know it was like one of like the lowest rated whatever, but I do think that helped bring in a lot of people into this year.
For sure.
What do you think of Wicked?
I like Wicked. I think it is like, all in all, a pretty great adaptation and a great movie musical. I do think there's a little bit of like, I almost feel the need to push back against Wicked in some ways, just because it is one of those films that its supporters die for this thing. Like, it is like, its top tier supporters swear by it being the best movie ever made, have seen it 6 times already, are crying that it didn't win Best Picture. I don't think it's that good. Like, there's technical elements in it that just like don't work for me. Like, I think it looks kind of ugly in a lot of situations, which it never should. Because the production design, which it won an Oscar for, the costumes, which it won an Oscar for, are unbelievable. They just don't look great on screen because the director and they don't know how to light it and shoot it.
Sure.
So I had issues with that. It also, like, it is long. That's kind of an inescapability with
Yeah.
this movie. It's 2 hours 40 minutes long, but overall, the performances are really good. The music works. Like, you can't be upset with Wicked as a film, I think.
No. No, I agree full-heartedly. I loved Wicked. I had some of the best times, like we talked about this a couple times ago, where it's like it was such a movie I was able to shut my brain off, and then I escaped on the other side, being like, oh my gosh, I didn't think about how long it was, or how
Sure.
it looked, or whatever. I just had such a great time at the movies, which I think is what we should strive for in our like cinema and stuff like that. I thought that was fantastic. Do I think it should have been Best Picture? Not really. I don't think it's like Best Picture, worthy. But I
Sure.
think it did deserve production. I'm glad it won costumes. I think both of those are very deserving. They did a great job.
Agreed.
Is it perfect? No, and that's okay. It didn't have to be. I think it did a really good job at what it was. But that being said, again, I'm glad it won something. I think that's good. I think it's good for movies like this to win Oscars, because I do think that's a sign of slight change, where you don't have to be these like very pretentious movies all the time. You can have these blockbusters win stuff too. I think that's healthy. I think that's good.
Sure. I mean, they have to be well done. I mean, like,
Yeah,
blockbusters winning Oscars is not necessarily new. I mean, the first like true blockbuster,
you're
Jaws,
right.
won Oscars. Gladiator
You're right.
wins Best Picture in 2000. Um, and like, Inception is nominated for a
Sure.
bunch of Oscars. So it's not like it hasn't happened, but I agree that I think when we are getting blockbusters that have enough like within them to be considered some of the best films of the year, it's great for the industry as a whole.
Absolutely. And it's kind of interesting, because it's like I feel like a lot of the best pictures art happen to be, and this isn't anyone's fault, just movies a lot of people have not seen or haven't heard of. And
Mhm.
I think, again, just like extending that reach a little bit for maybe something people have seen
Yeah.
is
That's a
helpful.
lot of it. Is they're just like, most of these movies don't play in theaters long enough. They don't
Yeah,
have a
you're right.
marketing campaign that is strong enough to get
Hmm.
people who otherwise wouldn't care so much
Yeah.
in the because what happened, like, it's not that nobody cares if a movie wins Best Picture or not. Like, people do care. The Best Picture winner every year sees a bump in people wanting to see it after
Yeah,
it wins.
you're right.
It's just the fact that it usually is pretty, not usually, but sometimes is very inaccessible to
Hmm.
people.
Yeah.
That causes that issue, I think.
I agree. Like, I always have to put in like a thing where, like, when I do my like most anticipated films of the year episode, it's like these aren't necessarily going to be the best of the year. The best of the year probably movies I haven't even heard of yet. So we'll talk about that at the end of the year and stuff like that.
Right.
So, yeah, I like Wicked. I think it did good this year. The Substance. Um, Shocked that it's so low in their little list here. Did you see The Substance?
I did, yeah.
Okay. What do you think of The
Uh,
Substance?
I think it's a great movie. It's one I probably won't watch again for at least a while.
Hmm.
It's a tough watch. Um, but at the same time, I think it's so incredibly gripping. Like, it is super unique. Its commentary is really like vital and important right now, I think. Like, it's
Yeah.
people in movies have done this sort of commentary before, but not in such a I kind of love these types of movies where this is an issue that we want to talk about, and we're going to pick an extreme way to showcase this
Yeah.
through the medium of film. Um, which is kind of what this is. It is a horror movie, so that's like,
Yes.
I love that it's nominated for so much and even like won awards and is here at the Oscars, because genre films generally do not get a ton of love. Um, but I think it's not my favorite of the year by any means, but it's entirely deserving to be here. And
Hmm.
it did feel like at sometimes a like dark horse where it was like, what if The Substance won Best Picture? Like, it, because there was so much going on
Yeah.
with all these other movies. It didn't, and I think that's totally fair. It wouldn't have been my Best Picture, but I really like it.
Yeah. I almost didn't watch this one because I don't typically like like horror movies or like scary, like those are just not movies I enjoy very much. But
Mm-hmm.
for some reason I was like, I'm gonna check this out, and it was a tough watch for me. Not necessarily because I found it scary necessarily, because I don't know if like the word scary is the one I would use, but I
Mm-hmm.
do think it like kind of touched me in like a fundamental fear I do have. I think my number one fear is like the fear of growing old without a purpose, or like getting old and realizing, oh, I haven't done anything with my life. And I think having your narrative be someone wasting their life on purpose to please the masses, to come across as better than, really touched me. I think that's a good commentary on our society, right? I was just like, we kind of already do that as is. Like, we don't
Sure.
strive for our greatness. We don't think we're good enough. Instead, we have to change everything about ourselves because your cousin thinks that you would be better at this, or what, like whatever. And her destroying her life because, no, I need them to look at me better. I need to be in the spotlight. I need to be up front.
Yeah.
Really
Well, and it's
touched me.
also there's also a lot of commentary on the industry of Hollywood and how
Yes, absolutely.
there's always this desire, especially with women and with
Yeah.
actresses, to who is younger, prettier, sexier,
Hmm.
like in their prime, and it is something we see like it's been proven time and time again. It's harder for actresses to get roles once they're in their 30s, in their 40s. Like they're not seen as like attractive enough to put
Yeah.
in movies at a certain point, and it sucks, and it's a like big issue. And so to touch on it in, like I said, such an extreme
Yeah.
way of this like black market substance that like it almost sci-fi in a way as well.
Yeah.
It's a cool movie.
It is, and I think it's really funny that it is up for Best Picture at the Oscars, because I think Oscars is such a good example of those things we just talked about, being like, these people are important, we love them, they're amazing, and tomorrow, I don't know, they're back to doing whatever. And I feel like it is such a, again, like just like in the movie itself is like, this is a character that won an Oscar and is now irrelevant. So I think for it being there this year for this movie, it was really, really funny.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. Like it's, I think its performances are gripping. I think its story is very, connective. Like I think it is fantastic. And I think it's the movie that like affected me the most this year. And I ended it being like, well, maybe I'm done with movies actually, because it took me out to a point where it's like, well, I'm done with those actually. That's crazy. And I think that's a good example of like what movies can do, right? If a movie can affect you to that point, then it did its job, right? If it can like make you feel something, it's a good movie. I think it was my it may have been like the favorite, like, or it may have been the one I thought was best out of the ones I saw. Not necessarily my favorite, because I'll probably never watch this again, just in terms of like what you said. But no, you're right. It's fantastic. Hello Connor, how's it going, my friend? How's it going? Hope you're doing well.
Hey, Connor.
Yes, okay. We're gonna move through a couple of these, and again, some of these I don't have much to say about. The Nickel Boys.
Mhm.
So when I watched the other day as well. What's your thoughts on the Nickel Boys?
This is the one that I guess my perception of has changed the most since I've seen it.
Hmm.
Because I watched it in theaters. It was playing at the AMC here with a couple of friends, and while I thought it was very like interesting and different, it didn't hit with me. I get like it wasn't. I didn't come out thinking, "Oh my god, I loved it." Um, but the more I've like sat with it in my brain, having seen it and seen people talk about it, seen clips on Twitter, I think it's a brilliantly made film. Like I think it
Yeah,
is low key gonna be like it's gonna be looked at as a sleeper in this award season,
sure.
that it like didn't win anything, snuck into the 10th best picture spot. Um, it's a really, really unique film
Hmm.
when you consider the style of film, like the cinematography being shot in the first person, the commentary it delivers on racism in our country, and the experience of young Black boys. I think it's a powerful movie. It's just one that I didn't love it when I saw it. Like maybe it was a little too confusing. Maybe it was a little too boring, quote unquote, at times. Like I didn't keep my attention the whole time. Like it wasn't as gripping to me as maybe some of the other films.
Yeah.
But I think it has a lot of interesting stuff to say, and it's the one that I've thought about maybe the most since.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
I agree. Like I feel very bad about it because I do think it has one of the strongest messages and probably one of the most important movies among this list. But it is a movie. I agree. I did sometimes find myself fading off. I mean, like, no, this is important. I have to stay with this. This is good. But it is sometimes does kind of lose you sometimes. But I agree. I love the filmmaking techniques. Like it's like first person POV, just like you're watching it from their perspective, and then when they sometimes switch to being like you're seeing the same exact scene from another character's perspective is so cool. Like that's such a cool thing, and how it puts you in their shoes of like you fear for these characters' lives of just like what they're going through and stuff. I think is it's very powerful for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. All right, Dune Part 2. Now we've also, I think every episode you've been on in the last 3 episodes, we've talked about Dune Part 2. So we don't have to spend too long on this. But
no, I mean, I've said on this podcast multiple times before. This is my favorite movie from last year. It is like shocking to me how much I love this movie, but it is just to me like near perfect science fiction filmmaking. I think if this movie comes out in October, there's a good chance it's the Best Picture winner, or at least wins more than 2 Oscars, because the first Dune wins 6 Oscars, and I think this movie's better than the first one by almost every measure. I already talked about Chalamet. I love him here. I think Austin Butler could have been nominated for supporting actor, and I would have been down with it. He's such a good side villain, almost sidekick to the main villain. It feels like if there's a movie in this selection that you can point to and say that's why we need theatrical experience. This is the transcendent power of filmmaking in terms of showing or creating something that we can't experience ourselves. Dune Part 2 is the movie. I mean, it just rocks. I know the franchise just doesn't work for some people. I didn't think it was going to work for me after the first one, but I don't know. This one just gripped me in a whole different way, and I loved it.
For sure. And even someone that's not super into this franchise, I don't think there's any arguing masterful filmmaking all around, just in its acting and its visuals and its performances and its music, and it's it should have. I'm really shocked it didn't do more. And I think as someone who didn't really like this movie that much, I found myself not liking, it's not the right word I want to use, but it wasn't as into it. I found myself wanting to support it. After the whole thing, I was like, oh, we didn't watch Dune Part 2 because we didn't like what. I was like, that is so stupid. That is so dumb. You should be watching all of these movies.
Yeah, there's a crazy discourse with all the and it happens every year where Academy members release anonymous ballots or whatever. They're like, oh, I just didn't watch it.
It's it's another 3 hours. I was like, almost all these movies are almost 3 hours.
This is your job, bro.
Yeah.
It's your job to watch the movies. You're a part of the Academy for a reason. It is crazy that some of them just don't watch films.
I mean, I didn't watch all of them. Can I do it now? I didn't see them all. I can do it.
Right.
This is easy. It's stupid. Dune Part 2. Wish it one more. Maybe I'll see Dune Part 3. We'll see. The Conclave. We talked a little bit about this on Discord the other day. What do you think of The Conclave?
I like Conclave a lot. At the same time, I thought it would have been a boring win if it had won Best Picture. Because I think once we got down to it, this was the other movie that had a shot at Best Picture, other than the one that won, is what a lot of people were thinking. It is tailor-made to win Oscars.
Oscars, yeah.
But at this, like, I think it does enough that is unique and that is interesting, where it doesn't feel like it was made with the purpose of winning Oscars. It does feel like it was made with a purpose of telling this story, and I think it does that well. There's lots of good performances in it. The cinematography is incredible. And there are moments in this that I think are unbelievable. Like, stupidly locked in, like, amazed that they made me care about moments in this as much as it did, given the subject matter. But at the same time, it's a movie about, like, the Pope and the Vatican and, like, this whole, like, it's a little boring. I don't think it escapes that ultimately, but I think it's more interesting than a movie like this should, like, had the right to be. Like, it does do a pretty good job at what it's doing. It's just, it's not my favorite, but it's not a movie I dislike either. I think it's pretty good.
I agree. I think this movie's very well made. It's very good. And like, starting out, I was like, oh, this is kind of a rough watch. So I think as you kind of get into, like, the main plot, I was like, okay, this is fun. It's very, like, this is a very stupid thought, but, like, I was like, oh, this is like Game of Thrones, but, like, for the Pope. This is crazy. Like, whatever. Like, but, like, no, I think it's good. I think, like, again, I'm sometimes not the best at reading these kind of things, but, like, I felt like the screenplay was really, really well done. Like, I liked how it was written and, like, how a simple scene could engage you. You think the movie is going one direction, as, like, you know, films are normally templated, and it's like, nope, we're not doing that. We're going this direction. I was like, oh, and it ends in a way where it's like, oh, it's over. Oh, I thought there was going to be another little bit here. Okay, we're going this direction. That's really fun. I really like that. That's really cool. But it's not necessarily a movie I'm going to be thinking about for a long time. I was like, I watched it. That was good. Cool. Moving on. Kind of.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I get that.
Yeah. Very good. All right. The Brutalist. Now, this is one of them that I wish I would have seen. It's one of them, because it's always hard to predict, like, what are going to be the big winners of the night. This is the biggest winner that I feel like I didn't see this year. Did you see this one?
Same for me. No, I didn't. Okay. I didn't get around to this one. I wanted to for a long time.
Yeah.
The length intimidates me. I'm just gonna be honest. Like, it's so long. I'll probably get around to it. I'll make an effort to watch it at some point. I have heard, like, this one also had controversy with, like, it using AI in certain instances, and they used AI to kind of alter or fix Adrian Brody's, like, accent, because he has a Hungarian accent. And throughout portions of the film, they used it to kind of, like, help out with that, make that a little bit better. They also used it to create certain, like, backgrounds in the film, I think. So it shouldn't take away from, like, the work that did, like, the human work that did go into the movie, but that was controversial with it.
Especially at an award show, where it's like, should we be rewarding, like, AI and stuff like that? Like, and especially if someone that won for, like, a performance, that's also, like, a thing. Yeah.
In Adrian Brody's defense, it's not like he was in the, like, editing room where they were doing it to, like, he just gave the performance and then they fixed, like, quote unquote, fixed it afterwards. And it's probably a very small portion of his actual performance.
Sure.
But yeah, haven't seen it. There's a lot of people who do think it's, like, movie of the year material.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen a ton of praise for it. So I'll be curious to see what I think. Particularly Guy Pearce, supporting actor, I've heard a lot of praise for. And that's a guy that I like, that I feel like hasn't been in a ton. Iron Man 3, baby. But yeah. I don't know. I don't have a lot to say because I just never got around to seeing it.
Completely fine, completely valid. I felt bad because I was about to see it in theaters because I was like, oh, it's showing, awesome. And I saw that 3 hours and 30-minute runtime. I was like, I'm going to watch that one at home instead, actually. That's really long to sit there in a theater. But yeah, no, like, these kind of movies are always very tough because it is a huge commitment. You have to put aside a big portion of time. Which again goes to the whole thing is like, well, this is over 3 hours. You can watch this, but like you watch this, but not Dune. Like, I don't know, whatever.
Sure.
Anora, which was the best picture of the year, the overall like sweep of the Oscars this year, was overall my favorite of the year. I think just in terms of like the one I ended up enjoying the most and one I had the most fun with this year. What do you think of this one?
I love Anora. I'm a huge Anora fan. It was my second favorite behind Dune of the nominees. And I could not be happier that it won, honestly. Like, looking back, the Oscars have had a pretty solid stretch of Best Picture winners, I would say. When you look at least in my opinion, like Anora winning this year, Oppenheimer last year felt like inevitable. Like that was the Best Picture winner for that year. Everything Everywhere All at Once, I think, is a super cool win. Then you go like Coda, although a movie I like, I think is a pretty weak Best Picture winner in the grand scheme of things. And that like Nomadland, right after Parasite, like we're in a good era of them like getting the top film. I think I thought Anora was super unique. The way every act feels like a different like tone and a different movie completely, and yet it all works as like a whole. Like the first act is very much a romance, like almost rom-com. Unique, like seeing this character like fall in love in a very unique circumstance. And then the second act is like a total screwball comedy, like off the wall, crazy, like almost buddy road trip around the city, like insane. And then it all kind of comes back in the like all the themes come together in that third act. I think the ending, everyone talks about it, but the ending's an all-timer for me. Like the ending of this movie is brilliant. And I'll be like, that's one I'll think about for a long time, especially seeing it in the theater. Because I didn't know where it was going, you know, and I don't want to spoil it, but it like, I really was like, oh, what is happening? Is it? And then it develops and it ends and it like makes total sense to me. And it like, I love that ending. I think Mikey Madison, who won Best Actress in sort of a surprise upset. I think a lot of people thought Demi Moore was going to take it for the substance. I think Mikey's incredible in this. Probably would have been my choice for Best Actress too.
Yeah, no, like I was slightly shocked how much of a like a sweep it had, but I was really happy that it did because I think it does a really good job. It is such a like chaotic journey that I wasn't expecting. Like you said, you jump in, I was like, oh, this is very fun, this very, you know, a fun little rom-com, and then it switches to such a chaotic experience where you're like, holy shit, these actors are giving their absolute all in these performances and this very crazy outcome that we end up going through. And I agree. I love its themes of like unpredictability, I guess, and a character that's just going through the flow, being like, yeah, I'll get married to this guy I've known for like 2 weeks. All right, this is crazy. This is awesome.
Yeah,
and just like
I think it strikes a really unique depiction of like a main character who is ultimately super naive and very like you said, goes with the flow, doesn't really understand like the situation she's in until it's too late, while at the same time not demonizing the character for that. Like the movie lets her be naive while still being like human and still having like ownership of herself, and then it all kind of comes out in that ending where we kind of get to process everything that we really didn't because it was such a journey and such a ride.
Yeah, like it is a movie where like every step of the way you're like, no, don't do this, no, you're doing this, oh no, this is crazy. But again, she is such a strong character, and like where it ends is very, I think, satisfying for both characters at play with just how they end it. So yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm glad it won Best Picture.
me
Shout out to
too.
Sean Baker as well, which is what is the highest Oscar winner of all time. Like won 5 Oscars in one night or something crazy. Which
He won 4, which I
4?
think is tied for the most
Oh,
for
is it?
anyone. Bong Joon-ho also won 4 for Parasite.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because Sean Baker won director, picture, editing, and screenplay. Screenplay is the one award that it won that I think could have gone somewhere else if they wanted to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think the screenplay is a strength of it. So I'm not really mad at it. I loved this movie. If Dune wasn't going to win more, I'm happy this one did.
Yeah, yeah. I imagine it's probably a very hard film to write. Just like writing around its circumstances, I bet it's very difficult.
Yeah.
So, shout out to
And I
them.
think it handles its subject matter pretty well. Like I have seen a lot of discourse being super tapped in on like film Twitter and stuff. Like some people do think yeah. Yeah, Connor. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
It's insane. But getting back to Anora, like it is a movie about women written by a man and directed by a man, which is important to acknowledge. And I understand some people like having feelings about that and feeling like maybe the purpose of this movie isn't actually as noble as some make it out to be. But I do think like it has to be like men should be able to write about women. There just has to be women also writing about women, and the
Yes.
men have to have an understanding of the like context at play. And I think Sean Baker does. Like I
Yeah.
think although you see misogyny and different like crucial themes play out in this movie, the actual like stance the film takes is generally the right one.
Right. It's not like glorifying that misogyny. It's embracing it, being like, this is a problem. These are things that these women have to deal with every day, and what are the consequences of those things? For sure.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I fully agree. And our last one here, and this is one I haven't seen. I'm Still Here.
I
Have you
haven't
seen
seen
this
it
one?
either, but I've heard it's unbelievable.
I hear
Like
it's
I've
good.
actually heard it's so good, so I need to watch it.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is another I think foreign language film.
It is. Yeah.
So
We had
kind
3
of
this
a
year. Yeah. 2?
yeah
3?
big
Yeah.
year for foreign language. Kind of making its presence known at the Academy Awards. You know, Flow doesn't really have any dialogue.
Yeah.
At all, so that's kind of an like unique one that plays into this too. But yeah, I haven't seen I'm Still Here. I'll want to get around to it. One of my roommates saw it and she loved it, so I'm
Sure.
definitely gonna want to get to it. But yeah, I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah. It's like that's another one where it's like I have to. I can't just multitask. I had to sit down, pay attention, actually watch it, and sometimes that's just hard. With a busy schedule. So we
Yeah,
have about 20 minutes left until you have to kind of dip out here.
yeah.
Let me answer Connor's question here really quickly. Thank you so much, Connor. How would this Oscar year compare to other Oscar years in terms of the films nominated for you?
Yeah, we touched on it a little bit at the start of the stream. I was saying I think as a whole, the nomination, it was a bit of a weak nomination year,
Sure.
especially compared to last year. I think was very strong. 2022 was strong at the top.
Yeah.
In 2022 there were movies I thought should have been nominated that weren't, that would have made it even better. But I do feel like there were some snubs in terms of nominations this year that I think to me would have been like Sing Sing. I would have
Yes.
loved to see nominated for Best Picture. I thought that movie was incredible. Challengers getting 0, I think is
Crazy.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like the Ross and Reznor score needs to be nominated. Like I don't know what we're doing not nominating the Challenger score. But as a whole, I think it was a fine nominations year. There's movies that I really like. There's some I need to get to still that could raise or lower my opinion on that. But especially compared to last year compared to a year like 2019, I don't
Yeah.
love it. I think this year is more in line with like a 2021,
Mhm.
where we do see Coda win, but like Power of the Dog is nominated that year and West Side Story is nominated. I would kind of compare those two. So I don't think it's the best, but at the same time, there's definitely good stuff.
I agree, and you know, we talked about this in our best like movies of the year thing that we did. I do think it's just a slightly weaker year in general. Not saying there aren't really good movies. I agree. Sing Sing, Challengers. I'm on my like animation high horse every time, but I'm like, put Flow in there. I think Flow totally should be up for like Best Picture, even a Wild Robot.
Yeah,
A lot of
they're not going to put animated movies in
it,
Best Picture.
it's been
If
too
it was going to
long.
happen, it would have already, like,
Yeah,
ever since 2010, where like they expanded the field and immediately Up is nominated for Best Picture and Toy
yeah,
Story 3 is nominated for Best Picture, and it's like, okay, this is gonna be like
awesome. Yeah.
a normal thing, like a staying thing, and then
Mhm.
they haven't done it.
And it's so frustrating because it's like, okay, if they're not like in Best Picture, fine, whatever. The lot of great movies. It's that they probably weren't even considered. It's probably like they were like, no, it's animated. We're not putting it in Best Picture. Why would we? That's
Right. I
frustrating
mean,
to
you look
me.
at it
But
like, The Boy and the Heron and Spider-Verse not being nominated
yeah,
for Best Picture. Like you can go through a bunch of like Soul could have been a
yeah,
Best Picture nomination, and it
sure.
wasn't. So
It's crazy. Out
yeah,
of all Pixar, Up is the one, which I love. Up, I think Up is fantastic. But like, out of all Pixar, that's not the one. I'm like, oh yes, that's their best one.
sure.
But yeah, no, I mean, we're gonna go through a couple of news stories here, and again, if you have to hop out as what about 15 minutes or so,
Yeah.
I do want to talk to you about this one here because it's kind of a continuation of a story we talked about almost 2 years ago when we talked
Oh
about
wow.
Barbieheimer. So I don't know if you remember after after Barbie did so well, they announced a bunch of like Hasbro projects that were maybe coming. There was like Uno and all these really crazy things like, yeah, we're gonna do all these movies. A little bit of a continuation from that. So Margot Robbie's produced Monopoly movie is officially moving forward. So I thought this was a very like fun little story I would throw in here. Now, do you like Monopoly? Is Monopoly
I
a
do.
game that you played growing up?
I'm a
Okay.
Monopoly fan. Yeah. Takes a long time to play, but it's a good
Mhm.
game.
Yeah, I was never able to get into Monopoly as a game for whatever reason. Like my mom hates it, so maybe that's a little part of it. Growing up, she's like, "No, no Monopoly. We're playing Uno or whatever it was."
Yeah.
I mean, how do you feel about this as a pitch? Like, do you think there's a world where a Monopoly movie could be good? Do you think that's a movie that could work?
I don't know. Part of me thinks like it's a weird issue because if you adapt the game as like purely like the game, it would be very silly, I think. Like it would be
Yeah.
kind of dumb. Or at the same time, if you try to adapt the larger themes of it,
Oh,
that's also a tough thing
yeah.
because it is like Monopoly ultimately is about like capitalism and like greed. And so
Sure.
I just don't know if there's a good middle ground with that. What I would say is what made Barbie such a hit at the end of the day wasn't the IP. Like the IP helped, but it was the fact that Greta Gerwig is an immensely talented filmmaker who got to mostly make the movie she wanted, that she
Right.
believed in, and that the people working on it believed in. And it had incredible production design and great performances. And on top of that, it was about Barbie, and they had great marketing, which Monopoly, like, I'm sure people will come out to see it if it's marketed
Yeah.
well. Margot Robbie producing it is interesting.
Yeah.
But I would have to see like who is involved with the project to decide if I would sign on for it or like be excited
Sure.
about it. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think it's a very hard pitch. Like, as soon as this kind of, because again, like there's been all those like Monopoly Go ads these last couple months where you have like Will
Oh
Ferrell's in
my
these
god,
ads and
yeah.
Chris Pratt and Jason Momoa, and those are very silly. And sometimes while I'm watching this, I was like, you know what, that could be maybe a fun movie, like in a weird way. But like I feel like it could also lean into like the Minecraft of it all. Like Minecraft comes out next month, and that looks like the most silly, just like over the top, like out
Yeah.
of touch kind of thing like ever. Um I'm open to it. Like I think there's potential in something like that. But you're right. How do you do it? Do you have it be like, oh, they're in the game of Monopoly, or do you go more of a Barbie route where it's like more of a take on those themes and ideas and characters? So it's an interesting one for sure. I don't have anything else to say. I thought that was really funny. Okay, our next news story here, and I know you're not as into like the MCU as maybe you were in the past, but this came out this week. I thought it was a really funny news story. I feel like Vin Diesel just keeps on saying shit. I feel like every time he talks, he's just saying weird shit.
Hmm.
So Vin Diesel talks about a potential Groot film for Marvel. He was like, "Yeah, like we're working on a Groot movie. It's gonna be like Planet Earth, and he's gonna go back to his home planet, and all these weird things." And again, with Marvel, it's very interesting because people will just say stuff like, "Yeah, we're doing that," and like it never gets made or it's never whatever.
Right.
Would you want a Groot movie? Like, is there any world where you're like, yes, a Groot movie is something I'd watch?
Uh, I think you tweeted out that you thought it had like it would be a good special presentation or
Yes.
whatever, right?
Yes.
I could see it going that route. I mean, they've already had a Guardians of the Galaxy special presentation that was
Hmm.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think it makes any sense to do as a standalone film at
Sure.
this point in time. Um, but I don't. Maybe if it was a really interesting story and
Sure.
was very well done. I know that's if it's well done, I'll watch it. But like, yeah,
Right.
there's that possibility. I don't know. I kind of would like them to do more of the like high quality special presentation things because
Yeah.
I thought Werewolf by Night or whatever it was
Excellent.
called was like sick as
Yeah.
hell. I
Yeah.
loved it.
I don't know if you saw they just greenlit a Punisher special presentation with
I did
John
see that.
Bernthal, and that's like, oh hell yeah, that's exactly what I want from those kind of things. Um,
Sure.
I like I've heard the pitch where people were like, why don't you make it like animated, have it be like Pixar style, and I'm like, oh, that could be kind of cool, especially in like the context of like how Groot speaks. Like I feel like you can more realistically like do it from Groot's perspective if it's animated, very Pixar, very like like maybe have some kind of like collab with like maybe it is a Pixar, like it's a collab between Marvel and Pixar. That could be really sick. I think there's a potential, not saying it would be, but a potential to do something very creatively different. And that's sometimes I think where Marvel struggles. They don't try new things. That is definitely a new thing. That is definitely something new for them. Like I really hate, because like one of my big things in like the comic book space, people being like, who asked for this project? No one wants this project. And then it's like Peacemaker and Penguin, which goes on to be like very successful shows and movies and stuff like that. So
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there is value in what the fans want or
sure.
what like is going to get people excited. But there's also a lot of value in trusting creators
Hmm.
to make great projects and
Sure.
projects that they're interested in. And like I also wouldn't have penned like Penguin as a like,
Sure.
oh, that's a slam dunk. Like obviously they're gonna make a Penguin show. Um, wouldn't have thought that. But
Yeah.
Matt Reeves wanted to do it, and it's one of the best comic book shows I've seen in a long time. So
Yeah. It's it's a tough road to walk, and I think especially Marvel's in a very interesting place because there's a lot of projects coming out. There's a lot of like, like people being like, I'm not going to watch all these projects, and do you want to waste one of those projects being Groot? It's an interesting road to walk for sure.
yeah,
But yeah, we're just going to go into our last one here. We kind of go through those faster than I thought we would. This one, man, I feel like I've been this only show supporter for the last 5 years. So I had to talk about this. The Tiana series for Disney Plus has officially been canceled and is no longer moving forward at Disney Plus. It's become like a running bit, I feel like, just between us of like, when's that Tiana show coming out? Where's it at, Disney? Is this a show you were at all excited for? Like, is this a show that you would have ever like watched or had any excitement for?
I think when it was originally announced, I was super excited about it. I do love Princess and the Frog.
Yeah.
I love Tiana as a princess. She's one of my favorite Disney princesses. She's still a Disney princess, right? I always get confused with the Disney princess lore is crazy. But yeah, she's one of my favorites, and I think she like she's a great character to do like an animated series on. So I'm disappointed that it like never found its footing, or that it like didn't work out. But at this point, because it's been so long, like the announcement that it's dead doesn't make me like sad, because it just hasn't been on my radar in so long.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would have liked to see it. I think it was a good idea. And I'm a big Tiana fan. So
yeah, I it's weird because every other project that was announced around that time has come to pass, like the Zootopia show, Baymax show, Cars show, even Moana, which was launched with this as well, went on to turn to a movie, which went on to be a $1 billion film. So it's like, obviously, great.
By the way, the quietest $1 billion movie I've ever seen, Moana 2. Nobody was talking about that movie.
No.
Like, let me tell you, I'm sure more so in your you saw people talk about it, but on the level of $1 billion film, I
saw nothing. It was really those kids that were like, "Mom, let's go see Moana. Come on, let's go." Which I'm happy for. I have you seen it? By the way,
no, haven't seen it yet.
Most disappointed movie of last year. I was very underwhelmed with that movie, but it's good for like animated films. Reached that milestone and stuff like that. But like, kind of like along with this news, they had said that like Disney Plus is no longer going to be doing Disney animated feature length stuff for Disney Plus. They're no longer like shows for them. And I was like, oh, that's a little disappointing, because I do think there's potential. I think there's characters that can hold their own shows and stuff. So that's a little disappointing. I'm curious if Pixar kind of stays in that same realm, like if they're going to keep doing shit, because like Win and Lose is airing right now, which I hear is decent. I know the like Inside Out show that came out during Christmas, that was really good. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, with that being said, we have reached the end of the stream here. I think we got through it at a decent point. I wasn't sure if we were going to get to it all on time, but I think we made it at the end pretty well.
Perfect.
Thanks for being here, my friend. This was an absolute blast. I know you're not uploading and stuff as much as you used to, but is there anything you want to shout out, promo, where can people find you, all that jazz?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been uploading a ton. You can find my YouTube channel, Arcanize. It's below my name there. But yeah, I've more so been focused on school, and still definitely into movies and content creation in different ways. But yeah, my focus has shifted a little bit, but still happy to come on here and talk about the Oscars and hang out with you. It was super fun.
Absolutely. Go check him out on all of his spaces. Our stuff. Check out Monday after the credits. Very excited. We're doing this week. We got Born Again coming out. We're going to talk about. We got Invincible, penultimate episode. We got Reacher. We got to talk about. It's going to be a very fun week. And then for next week's pipeline, we're going to be ranking all the Disney Plus series premieres. So tune in for that. Now that Born Again is officially out. By the way, have you seen the Born Again, or do you have any?
No, I need to watch it. I need to check it out. I'm a little nervous for what I'm gonna think, but
I'll be curious, because you like that like OG show quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. But yeah, again, thank you, my friend. And I will see you guys on the flip side. Bye bye. Thank you, Connor.
Thanks, Connor. Love you, bro.
Bye bye.